We can now speak to UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, who's joining us now live from Tunis. Thank you very much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. You've released a report recently about just this sort of thing, the use of torture in Israeli prisons against Palestinians, and I want to ask you about that further. But first, when you look at Marwan's case here, he has a lawyer, he's a very prominent figure. If this is something that his lawyer is saying is happening to him in prison, what happens to those in detention that do not have any spotlight on them?
No, exactly. This is the case of Marwan Barghouti is revealing of a system of profound moral and legal decay. Look, I've investigated torture in Israeli prisons for quite a while now, and this is why I decided to write a report about that. But last year, both the Commission Against Torture reported that torture was becoming a state practice, and also the Commission of Inquiry of the UN on Israel and Palestine concluded that Israel was committed acts that would amount both to torture and acts of genocide against the detainees and inmates. What I found through interviews and reports I received from survivors and their lawyers is that torture is absolutely institutionalized, enabled by law, shielded by courts, normalized in public discourse. And there are two aspects that I would like to highlight. On the one hand, in prisons, there is repeated beatings, punitive transfers, prolonged isolation, starvation, medical neglect, psychological torture, and a lot of sexual abuse and rape. All this is to break the spirit of the prisoners as human beings. And what I found extremely disturbing is the gamification of sexual abuse and rape. Rape by people, by soldiers, through metal objects, through trained dogs. And this has been done over countless prisoners. Now there are 10,000, but around 20,000 Palestinians have been imprisoned over the past 2 years. And the thing is that also beyond the prison walls, there is an entire torturous environment that is imposed on the Palestinian people. The homes reduced to rubble, hunger used as a weapon. So Israel is really torturing the Palestinians as part of the genocide that is inflicting on an entire people. And it's extremely worrisome.
So Francesca, you put a report together like this with all of this detail. You're putting it on the record, but what happens after that?
What should happen is that member states take a serious look at these documentations that come not only from me and others in the United Nations, but from Palestinians and Israeli human rights organizations. The documentation is countless, and because torture is absolutely provided, there is state and criminal individual responsibilities for that. So at a minimum, member states should impose sanctions on individual members of the government, and the International Criminal Court should investigate and prosecute those who are already identifiable as at the top chain of command. Like I've identified Ministers Motrich and Minister Ben-Gvir as two of the Israeli senior political figures that must be seriously investigated and indicted. And but of course, there is for torture, there is one of those crimes for which there is the possibility to activate domestic courts in many countries. So I do hope that the survivors and their families will take legal actions against the State of Israel, against those who have provided the tools to Israel to commit this violence. Especially there are European countries which are transferring or selling trained dogs, like military dogs that are being used for abuse, including rape against Palestinian inmates. This is really shocking.
Do you think that any of that is likely to happen?
It must. It must happen. It's going to happen if there is enough pressure that comes from the people. Clearly, we are at a moment of extreme darkness and sense of powerless among the people, because those in power, especially in so-called liberal democracies, seems to be otherwise occupied. Gulf countries, Arab countries are trapped in a spiral of fear and confusion because of the war that is ravaging the region. And everyone seems to be caught up with their own problems. But again, Palestine is not going to, it's going to haunt us forever. We need to stop this. So I call upon everyone to take responsibility and make pressure on governments to stop this. In Europe, there are signals that this can happen. In the US as well. More needs to be done, of course.
UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, thank you for being with us on Al Jazeera.